I am Michael Lynch, and welcome back to the Men Seeking Freedom podcast. We are not only a podcast, but a community of men. And when you see men who would be interested in this community, they're often, at some or multiple aspects of their life, very successful. But underneath the surface, they may be carrying some type of pain that they have a hard time communicating. And that pain can impact their health, their family, their career, their faith, their role in the community. And what we do, again, the word I love to associate with Men Seeking Freedom is communication. Get people to speak out. And what we do, obviously, in the podcast is we bring in people who can relate to this theme and this audience, yet they have their own unique experiences and expertise. And so without further ado, I want to introduce you to Dr. Howard Polansky. Dr. Polansky, please introduce yourself to the Men Seeking Freedom community.
Oh, Michael, thank you for the opportunity. And moving forward, I don't practice anymore, so we're just going to keep it to Howard. And we'll get into the reason and the story behind it, because I pray that no one has to go through what I did.
Oh, there's a good tease. Can you give us the? Do you want to give us the Cliff Note version of what you've been through, or feel free to give a detailed version?
Yeah. So, well, we've got 30 minutes, so I'll go through a few of the details. So, the reason for the doctor was I was a dentist. I practiced for 16 years, Navy first, private practice second. And Michael, I hated it. I was burnt out. I was miserable. And sometimes life leaves you little clues, and other times life hits you with a 2x4. My 2x4 moment was Sunday morning, Memorial Day weekend, 2018. Jaden, my older son, is 12 years old. I'm sitting next to his bed. He realizes I'm there and he says, "Dad." His voice is barely above a whisper. "Yeah, buddy." I lean over the bed. I put my ear over his mouth to make sure I can hear him. And he says three words I'll never forget. "Am I dying?" 12 days earlier, Jaden came home with a stomach ache. 3 days after the stomach ache, we're in the ICU at the Children's Hospital having emergency surgery. It was appendicitis that turned septic, 29 days in the hospital, 19 of them in the ICU, 8 straight days of sedation because he went to the operating room 5 times. After they take the tube out of his throat, they give him methadone and morphine to bring him down from the drugs he was on. So imagine your child looks like a heroin addict coming down from a high. And the very first question they will only ask you, "Am I dying?" My first breath was, did I hear him correctly? My second breath was, do not lose it right now. I look him in the eyes. I tell him, "No, you're not dying. You've had prayers from thousands of people all around the world, and you're going to be just fine." He looks at me. He knows I'm telling him the truth. He closes his eyes to get more rest. I walk outside that room and I broke. I mentioned to you, I was miserable. I was taking it out on everyone around me. But when I broke, only one thought seared into my mind. If life is this fragile and I'm unhappy with the path that I'm on, burn the ships. It's over. That's what I did. I sold my practice. September 2018, literally just walked away.
So the life event with your son was this was something that was building, and that served as the ultimate trigger, Howard? Is that how it worked?
Yeah, I mean, there are certain things about dentistry which are just unique to other professions, but it was, yeah, it was misery. And for me personally, it was misery. And that was just the catalyst to just say, it's like, how do I keep staying miserable when literally life was on the line? When my son, he was 12, when my son's life was on the line, where 2 weeks before he was perfectly healthy, and all of a sudden this happens. No one has a clue why, but you just have that come to whatever religious belief you have in that moment. And you're just like, oh my goodness, like I have been just going up the wrong mountain. I've been chasing something which just, one, was not in alignment with my soul. And number two is just like, who else really cares? When all is said and done, you've probably heard of that book, The Five Regrets of the Dying. It's no one cares if you worked harder. And so I was just like, screw this. There has to be a better way. I don't know what it is. This was not the most financially sound way to get out of the career that I put in and all the time, energy, effort, sweat, blood, and tears, literally and figuratively, into this, but it's what I needed to do.
There's a lot to go back and visit there. But the first thing I want to do, your son was 12. Here's a message to all men out there based on what we're talking about. 18 years ago, Howard, I'm playing golf on a Sunday afternoon on my own at a course near where I lived. I was married at the time and had a nice 9-hole walk. Everything was fine. It was I think it was don't remember the month, but I get into the car and all of a sudden I have this discomfort that was not existent in the round. And it wasn't you made a bad swing or anything like that. I got home and I said to my ex-wife, I was like, it's dinner time. I was like, I don't know. I don't feel like eating. I just want to lay down for a little while. I've got this weird ache. I must have pulled a muscle or some genius self-diagnosis on my part. Long story short, and it took 3 days to find this out, partly my fault. I wouldn't wait in a emergency room because I wasn't being taken care of fast enough. My appendix were ready to go. Now, I did not go through what your son did. And there was a comment made at the time after the surgery was done of, you were close to that really blown. Here's all I want to say to this. My next day in medical school would be my first one. But one of the things I learned from that experience was my doctor diagnosed it over the phone by having me push into the area of the pain. He had me, he says, now pull away quickly. And he asked me, and I don't remember the answer to this, was the pain on the push or when you pulled quickly? Whatever my answer was, I think it was the pull away quickly. He goes, you may end up laughing at me in the emergency room with all the people there, but I think your appendix are about to go. All where I'm going that at for the men, and again, you were talking about your son at a young age, but any man who's dealing with inexplicable pain in their lower right abdomen, call or go to an emergency clinic or whatever. So I'm sorry, that was one of the many things. There's so much. First of all, after all that, how is your son doing?
Yeah, I thank you for asking. And if you didn't ask it, I was going to address it. Is everything's okay now? He's healthy. He's 20. He's in college. 18 inches less of intestines, some cool scars. It was just a freak thing that happened. But knock on wood, there's no long-term health issues.
Good, good. God bless him. So let me ask you. Let's go back to dentist. Before the stage of I need to get out of this, what were you? Did you feel called to the profession? Did you have parents that were dentists? What led you even into that career path initially?
Yeah. So the answer is no. This was virgin territory, and it was a purely logical, rational decision. Growing up, and again, it's one of those, I'm not here to blame my parents' friends. It's just you don't know what you don't know. But growing up, I always heard it's like, oh, he's going to be such a great doctor. He's going to be such a great doctor. And then I woke up one day in college and I was like, I don't remember ever choosing to be a doctor. And so I was like, I just sat for a really long time to figure out what is it that I want to do. And dentistry was kind of that extension of medicine without, but it felt like my choice, but it was still all in my head and not in my heart.
Hmm.
So it's still, again, I just look back and it's just like, nope, that was not the right decision either. But I'm not here to play the what if game. I'm not here to make regrets with the decisions that I made, because if that's the case, I probably wouldn't be talking to you right now either.
One of the things that we had talked about just before we started recording this was you used a phrase that really resonates with me and comes up in conversations here. The quote I believe you said was, "The work you do is not your identity," which I think is like one of the golden nuggets to this whole community, amongst other issues that we deal with here. But is the reason I asked you that last question was, I'm just always fascinated at where were people at when they made that first choice for career. And then some people, after they do that, stay in it, even if they felt the way you did. It's like, I got to gut this thing out here. I got responsibilities. I'm making decent money, blah, 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 blah. But I'm fascinated by, so this series of events in your life says no more. So did you start to focus on what was your true identity at that point?
Yeah, I mean, it's to try and unravel that one sentence, the work you do is not your identity, after investing all of that time, energy, money. And I'm guessing the people that listen to this podcast have no idea from a financial perspective how much dentists or people that go down the path of dentistry have invested. So, Michael, I'm going to take a minute just to give you an understanding. The two most expensive dental schools, as we are recording this in March of 2026, in the United States is New York University and University of Southern California. They tell the incoming class for the next 4 years of dental school, just dental school, expect to take out $800,000 for student loans. I'm not counting college. I'm not counting if you got married. I'm not counting in terms of you have to live somewhere. I'm not talking car payments. I'm not talking anything else. I'm just talking those 4 years of dental school. Expect to take out $800,000 for student loans. Now, the average dental school right now is around 350 to 400,000, which is still a lot, especially for an industry that has been consolidating the way that medicine's been doing this for the last 30 years. And so you have, again, all of that financial burden along with this. You start to get into it and you're like, I don't know if this is the right thing, but I don't know how I can just pull away now because I can't declare bankruptcy on student loans either. And I don't know what other profession where I could potentially have the income to try and pay this debt off. So now all of a sudden you're stuck. And so after 16 years of this, it took at least, thinking back, a good solid year for me to unravel that one sentence of the work you do is not your identity. Now, thankfully, in that space of allowing that phrase to break apart, where there is the man, there is the father, and then there is the how I use my energy for exchange with someone else, and we just happen to use something called dollars, which has a different word of currency. And it's not a surprise that they use the term currency like an electric current to make the economy move. But in that gap, in that void, thankfully, what I do now is something that I love, is something I could do literally till the day I die. And call it a fortunate accident. I don't care what you call it. I'm just happy that I found it.
But let's walk through so we know enough to move out of an area that you've just laid out, 16 years, the costs involved, what I call the price you pay. In that case, it was literally the price you paid, in addition to the time and the studying and all that stuff's part of the price you pay as well. So was it a good bounce of the ball, so to say, that got you from that level of growth to what you're describing now? How did that all, this part here, your answer to this is going to be very helpful to a lot of people, because there's already people watching and listening to this who are saying to themselves, okay, I wasn't exactly where Howard was, but I can really relate to this story he's telling. How the heck did he get to the other side of the mountain?
Yeah. And again, it was all a fluke, honestly. And so let me continue the story. So my son's getting better. He's still in and out of the hospital, but definitely on the mend. I've sold my practice at this point, or it's right around there. And I'm sitting with another dentist who asked the obvious question: how are you walking away with all of the debt and all of that that I just referred to? And I made one dumb comment to him. I said, I kind of figured out how to make money move. Now he gave me that Scooby-Doo look. I tried to explain things that day. I didn't do a good job. But a few weeks later, I get the next statement in the mail for my house payment. I take a picture of it. I send it to this guy literally as a joke. And I said, hey, take a look at this. Michael, my house payment was $24.19. And he writes back, I see it. I still don't get what you're doing. I'm buying a condo next month. Will you teach me? I was like, I guess so. He paid off that condo in 8 months instead of 30 years. And so he tells his business partner, I tell a friend of mine what happened. They become the next two people I teach. And all of a sudden, now I'm listening to my heart instead of my head, and said, this is the way you're supposed to make an impact in this world. It's not dentistry. It's teaching people what I call the new rules of finance and the system around it so that they can get to their freedom sooner. And so what I am hoping for people to hear from this podcast today is that if there is a way to relieve the financial stress, because we understand there is the stress in terms of where we fit gender wise, there's the stress in relationships, there's the stress in marriage, there's the stress in terms of being a dad. And then you layer on, like, oh, yeah, now I also have traditionally be the primary financial carrier of this family too. And if there is a way to potentially reduce that stress, which there is, then at least you will have the capacity to fill in the gaps and have the energy for all the other things. That's really what I'm hoping people walk away with today, Michael.
And it's just the financial. I don't like to compare these to each other as kind of a scorecard, but financial stress is really at the top of the list of things men, or actually any human being, doesn't want to have to really talk about if they don't have to. I want to go back. You kind of glossed over, like, no pun intended, the money line, where you said, I became aware of how to make money move. Was that the term you used? Okay, that's
Yeah.
now that's an explosive, in a good way, explosive statement of, and you said it so casually. help help people understand, how did you discover this magical thing that started to bring value and purpose to you?
Yeah, we don't have to go into the whole history of that. Let me just get to the punchline because anyone can do this. You don't need me, but most of the people will use me as a guide just because they don't want to screw this up either. All right. So the magical tool is a line of credit. All right. So what exactly is a line of credit? It's an open ended tool. So the easiest, most common example is a credit card. You call up a bank, you get approved for a $10,000 limit, you purchase $3,000 of goods and services. At the due date, if you don't pay the $3,000 off, you still have $7,000 available in the line. Now, I call that availability access to cash. But once you pay the $3,000 off, you have the full $10,000 available again. So money's flowing in and flowing through this tool. The other really common example, and it's not the way that banks are going to market it to you, but is a home equity line of credit, also known as a HELOC. All right. And so what I ended up doing is I refinanced out of my traditional mortgage, out of the one-way street where the money goes in and you can't get the money out. I broke open that titanium safe, and now every dollar I put in, I can get out the next day. And that one small twist is how I was able to get down to a $24 payment. Because what ended up happening was I had this debt on my house. I sold my practice. I got this wad of cash. I didn't know what to do with it, so I just smushed it all together. Next thing you know, my mortgage is down to like $1,800. And all I'm doing is getting charged interest on $1,800, which is pennies. And so the timing of it was just fluky enough that when they closed the statement, it was a $24 payment.
Okay. So in process, are you someone, so as you come upon this opportunity, did it come about because Howard is insanely curious on his own and just started exploring and learning and discovering? That was there a mentor or three that was whispering words? Because I think that's the person who's hearing this is I hope is loving this story. But I mean, that's the part I'm wondering is, did it come from your own ingenuity, or were there some people that said, "Hey, Howard, you ought to look into this based on your current situation"?
No, no, it was kind of fluky. It was I was renting at the time. A YouTube video came on way late on a Friday night. I said, "This is too late. This sounds too weird. I'll look at it in the morning." That morning turned into all weekend, where by the end, what I didn't tell you, Michael, was that when I just sat down and said, like, what career do I go into? It was either dentistry or being an actuary. And for those who don't know what an actuary is someone who uses all of these super complex mathematical equations to figure out for life insurance companies when they think you're going to die to price the premiums appropriately. So that should tell you everything about how my brain works. And after looking at this all weekend, I was like, this is the most logical way I've ever seen how to pay off debt. Because I remember when I was previously married and we bought our first house, I was like, we're never going to pay this off. Like, this is driving me insane that I've got this for 357 more payments. Like, I was going out of my mind, but I didn't know how, I didn't see how else to do this. That video spawned in terms of me getting educated on playing the game a different way. Texas was the last state to be able to do it. They finally changed the rules the start of 2018. When I say I'm probably one of the first 10 people in the entire state that could play this game this way, I honestly don't think I'm lying. no one knew the rules changed, not even the banks around me. Because after I signed the paperwork, I called 10 banks literally around me. 9 of them said that's illegal. The last one said, I think you can do that now. I'm not sure. Okay. When I say no one knew, no one knew. So I did this. I was like, I've got to test this on myself first because I understand the theory. I just have to see in actuality, does it work? It did. And so this is how I've been sharing with people moving forward. And if you want, I can kind of go through just a high level example of what I mean by this, because I know it all sounds nebulous in terms of like, how does something with a higher interest rate make sense over something when I've got a 3% mortgage and that's why I haven't moved? And I know that's always the argument I hear, but if you don't want to go down that path, we won't go down that
No, no, no,
path.
no, no. Here's what I have no issue going down the path. Here's the favor I ask. Who is the I've told you, it's a male. Typically, women will watch this, but it's typically a male audience of established people. Tell me before, as you work your way into the process, who is the person listening or watching who should be really paying close attention based on the circumstance they're in right now?
Yeah. So I'm going to venture a guess in terms of the other members of your community. They are second guessing their career right now. And they are just like, I might want to get out just like Howard did, but I just don't see how I can pivot, how I can make a move that I can start to explore what my life should look like. If you currently have a job, that is huge bonus plus one, because just like I did in terms of getting the line of credit, they want to see that you have a stable income. Once you're approved, do whatever the hell you want. All right. I'm just telling you how the game works. All right. So someone where income is greater than expenses on a consistent basis, I'm leaving a salary and an income out of this intentionally. If you already have an emergency fund, you've already been putting away for retirement, and you still have this extra money, you're like, I don't know what to do. That's an ideal person to help. Okay. If you're on that pivot in terms of I'd really just love to be able to explore something else, even if that meant going part-time with my current job, so I had the capacity to go look at something else, talk to me. I'm not saying you have to hire me. Just please talk to me so that you can understand what your options are today, because the options are limitless while you're working. If you talk to me after you've quit, you've literally cut your legs off that I don't know how much I can help. All right. Again, I don't care if you hire me. At least have the guidance of what's possible out there, because where the biggest unlock can be is in your house and all of that equity that's trapped. So you mentioned, Michael, you live in the Northeast. Houses up there can be pretty expensive, especially the closer you are to New York City. So let's just say that, to give an example of what I mean, let's just say that you've lived in your house for quite a while, but it's appreciated. It's up to $1 million, which people in the Midwest may not understand what $1 million house is. Trust me, in the Northeast, that's not a McMansion. Okay. But you could have lived in there for quite a while that maybe your mortgage is 300,000. So there's $700,000 of equity or cash that's trapped. Now, in most states, we can go up to 80% loan to value, which means on $1 million house, we can play with $800,000. The first 300,000 is taken up by your mortgage, which means we could get a home equity line of credit of $500,000. Now, think of this like a credit card. If you never charge anything on a credit card, do you owe anything? No. And this is the exact same concept, is that you could have this quote unquote credit card. It's tied to your house of $500,000 that can just be there as an emergency fund. And if you really sit back and think about it, You say, I'm thinking about pivoting careers, I'm thinking about making a life transition. Would having access to an extra $500,000 alleviate that possibility for you to try something new? That's what I mean in terms of the unlock.
Is the okay, bunch of things to think about here. So, first of all, let's go back to the guy who's not left his job, could be suffering mightily. Uh, when they reach out to you, I guess I'm looking at this more from like a psychology question of, do you find yourself in the work that you do reassuring or inspiring that person to, hey, just hang in there a little bit longer with the job? Do you do much of that, or do you have peers that do that, or do you stay strictly in the for lack of a better term, the transactional lane of what's involved in doing something like this?
It's a great question. And the answer is that I do have to play part time psychologist with this for that person that's looking to transition careers. In that situation, if they came to me today, I'd be like, look, stick this out for 4 more months, because let's just get all of these other pieces in place so that you have ultimate financial flexibility. That's what I, because once you have the flexibility, then if something happens at work, you can say, F off, I'm out, because you've built in those safeguards in the guardrails that you can do this. If you just said that F off right now, you just like, and then you turn around and it's like, oh crap, but I still have that mortgage and I still have that car payment and I don't know where the money's going to come from. And it's like, no, if we rearrange things and all of a sudden, maybe there is a way in terms of freeing up that car payment. So now we just freed up another $800 a month from your budget. Depending upon what we do with the house, we could free up potentially a couple grand a month. And now all of a sudden, this is what I mean in terms of just reducing that stress, is that if your monthly budget's 10,000 a month, but now we were able to rearrange it that you live the same lifestyle, but now it's down to 7. Would that provide relief?
Yeah, I'm processing all this. You know what's funny about life, and you're right in the middle of doing this. It's amazing how we can get very stressed about a pending decision. And one of the things that jacks up the stress is lack of information. So you're just letting whatever is rolling around in your head. Now you're sharing an expertise that the average person doesn't have. So that person who's in your situation, stress is going to go up because they don't know, or maybe the only options they're thinking about are all negative options. And it's just interesting how, so the guy who's listening to this, or the woman influencing him, I think the way well, we all know that's how, if it's a couple, that's a factor. One way of positioning, based on what I'm hearing from you, is you, Howard, are a great resource to start gaining information about options to get yourself out of what seems to be a mountain of a situation. Is that a fair way to put it?
It is. And I'm not, and have there been times that people have shared the numbers with me and I'm like, oh, you're stuck. Like I wish there was a way out of this. I don't know. I don't see it. And then there was other times where I'm just like, no, we just do 2 things. And that's going to unlock hundreds of thousands of dollars for you. And just increase your spendable cash today, thousands of dollars a year. And it's one of those that, the what's the saying is that it's hard to read the frame when you're inside the box.
Hmm.
And that's the thing, is that I know the way that my brain works is way out of the norm. And I am trying to use that on behalf of the common person because, frankly, the whole financial system is set up to screw you.
Mm-hmm.
It's time for them to get screwed. I mean, that's really the simple thing. They've been doing enough, they've screwed enough on everyone else. It's like you don't have to keep playing their game.
I'm very critical of our education system, not necessarily for what they taught me, but what they don't teach any of us. And so much stuff in the financial realm falls into that category. And it just amazes me that we live in in my opinion, the greatest, freest country in the world. And there really is this level of illiteracy as it relates to finances. So you had briefly mentioned the fact, I don't want to load the person's mind with too much info, but one of the things I think you said, Howard, was the person you can best help has assets or income. I forgot how you explain again what
Yeah.
that very baseline, because as you mentioned, you don't want to, sometimes you have to tell people, I can't really help you. What are
Yeah.
those first couple of things where they could at least say yes or no to that could trigger a conversation to you?
As things are today for you right now, income is greater than expenses on a consistent basis. And I say consistent because is there times that you may have to replace your roof? Yes. Is there times where you could have car trouble and you're going to go negative 1 month? Yes. But that's why you also have an emergency fund in place. So income greater than assets. I see you've got an emergency fund. I see you've been putting away for retirement and you still have this extra money. You're like, we don't know what to do at this point. And so that's someone that usually I can help because if you've got a house, especially if you've been in it for more than, call it 5 years, it's probably appreciated. There's probably money that's stuck that we can utilize, start to play this game, start to lean the whole financial system in your favor, and start to see just a shortcut because Michael, and I'll just kind of end on this. The people that reach out to me, the people that I've been able to help, in terms of the spendable cash increase in the first 12 months of learning the system, for those that are business owners, it has averaged $65,000. That has ranged from 15,000 all the way up to $290,000. Not because they worked any harder, just because they learned how to move money more efficiently through their lives. But for those who are W 2 employees, it has still been over $3,000 a month. Living the same lifestyle, you just literally have more money in your pocket every month, all because you're making money move through your life in a slightly different fashion, a fashion that's more strategic and more advantageous for you than for the banks.
Okay, so you just specify you'll work with either a business owner or a non-business owner in this situation, and also is there any impact on whether the person is a home owner or not, or are
No, but
most of the people you work?
most of the people, most of the people that tend to reach out are homeowners,
Okay,
just because they're just like, I don't want a 30-year mortgage.
yeah.
I'd love for it to go from 28 years down to 8. And so, yes, most tend to be homeowners, but again, income greater than expenses. If you have other debt, there's other ways to make this work. It just have to see on a case by case basis.
What I love about your story is, okay, it starts with let's go against conventional wisdom and bail out of, that's my term, bail out of a career that I'm sure most people would line up and say, you're an idiot for doing that. And you did what you did. Number two, a few minutes ago, and I don't remember exactly how you said it, but you said something like, this is what I'm wired to do. This is what comes. You use some kind of, and I always love in general hearing people say, because there's say that because there's way too many people just grinding it out in a job, which, and again, with respect to their circumstance, I'm not telling people, like you were saying, you just don't flee. But boy, if there's a choice in life for men seeking freedom to do a career where you say to yourself, wow, I can do this stuff almost as naturally as I breathe. That's always just a nice thing to strive toward, even if it's not something that can happen immediately. A couple things. Give us some coordinates here. Where can we direct people to from either a website perspective or get information, as well as how do you prefer people contact you directly?
Yeah, so the website is financiallyled.com, and the lead is a play on words. Lift the burden from fixed debt payments, expand your cash reserves by utilizing a line of credit. Now that we have the money freed up, now we can deploy that extra cash into opportunities and into our dreams. So that's the financially led system. LinkedIn is a great place to find me. That's going to be a key one. But if you just want to reach out and you're just like, I'd love to know more, can I call you? 512 608 1020. That's my cell phone. You can text me, say you heard me on Michael's podcast. What you did sounds cool, but it sounds crazy. Can I talk to you? 100% yes.
And just to reiterate, going back to the beginning, it used to be Dr. Howard Polansky, now going by Howard Polansky, Polansky. I just want to make sure people have your full name too. So, Howard, this was awesome. Thank you very much. You were able to work in a few things of, personal hardship, consistent theme here, unique angle of finding an expertise that solves problems and brings relief to people. And I can't thank you enough for that. And I hope this audience will choose to educate themselves in an area where they may be making assumptions or have misconceptions of saying things like, oh, I'm screwed. I can't do anything. You did give us some parameters, obviously, to be thinking about. So, Howard, thank you again. To the audience, please share this with everyone you know. If you're curious to know more about men seeking freedom, we've gotten very creative here and we've secured the menseekingfreedom.com URL. That's our website. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Take care.